Hello and welcome to the Salah Poetry Podcast. My name is Rory Hatchell. This is episode 58, and we are talking about Song of Myself once again. This is Song of Myself. We're actually doing two today because one is super duper well, we'll do one today. We'll do two next time because 17 is really short. We're doing 16 today. So, where we left off, listing. The Whitman is like the patron saint of the listing poem, and as he listed a huge list of things last time, he has a smaller list today as well. So this is on theme for what he's been talking about. Bit of a new spin on it today, which I appreciate. So here we go. Song of Myself, Part 16. I am of old and young, of the foolish as much as the wise, regardless of others, ever regardful of others, maternal as well as paternal, a child as well as a man, stuffed with the stuff that is coarse, and stuffed with the stuff that is fine. One of the nation of many nations, the smallest the same and the largest the same, a southerner soon as a northerner, a planter nonchalant and hospitable down by the Oconee I live. A Yankee bound by my own way, ready for trade, my joints the limberest joints on earth and the sternest joints on earth. A Kentuckian, walking the vale of the Elkhorn in my deerskin leggings, a Louisianian, a Georgian, a boatman over lakes or bays or along coasts, a Hoosier, Badger, Buckeye, at home on Canadian snowshoes or up in the bush, or with fishermen off Newfoundland, at home in the fleet of ice boats, sailing with the rest and tacking, at home on the hills of Vermont or in the woods of Maine or the Texan ranch, comrade of Californians, comrade of free Northwesterners, loving their big proportions, comrade of raftsmen and coalmen, comrade of all who shake hands and welcome to drink and meet, a learner with the simplest, a teacher of the thoughtfulest, a novice beginning, yet experient of myriads of seasons, of every hue and caste am I, of every rank and religion, a farmer, a mechanic, artist, gentleman, sailor, Quaker, prisoner, fancy man, rowdy, lawyer, physician, priest. I resist anything better than my own diversity. Breathe the air, but leave plenty after me. And am not stuck up, and am in my place. The moth and the fish eggs are in their place. The bright suns I see and the dark suns I cannot see are in their place. The palpable is in its place, and the impalpable is in its place. There you have it. So, what does Uncle Walt want to teach us today? Once again, we have a list of a whole lot of people, largely comprised of opposites. That we have the northerner and the southerner. We have someone who has stern joints and someone who has limber joints. We have maternal and paternal, child and man, old and young. All these opposites set up. Again, creating these extremes, and by saying he's both, that means he is kind of on every point of the spectrum. He is the old, the young, he's the middle-aged, he's the teenage, he's all these things in the prime of his life and in wax and wane, etc., etc. So, once again, connecting. This time he is not being very specific. A little bit. I mean, the Elkhorn in my deerskin leggings. But not nearly as before, where the previous poem, for example, where we have things such as the opium eater reclines with rigid head and just opened lips. That's a very vivid image, whereas here we have the old and the young, at homes in the hills of Vermont or in the woods of Maine or the Texan ranch, right? So very kind of vague, but trying to cover everything. Again, you can see how Walt Whitman is our American poet, because this is a very American poem. You can almost hear, from the mountains to the valleys to the, wind of grain or whatever the lines are. God bless America, right? That kind of thing is there. And so we have a pattern, okay? The first question is, where does he break the pattern? He doesn't so much until the end. It's kind of the list, and then there's the commentary on the list. So obviously the commentary on the list is going to be important. The list is a whole bunch of things, primarily American things, although Canadian is included. Native American is included. You can debate whether or not those are American or not. But he's included all his experience, the wide and breadth of this land, all the different walks of life, and he is saying that he is those things. Then he says he's of them, right? He is part of them. He is from them. He says, then he switches to he is at home in certain places, at home on Canadian, at home in the fleet of ice boats, at home on the hills of Vermont. Then he says he is comrade of each of these things, a brother of Californians, comrade of free Northwesterners, etc. And then he gets into like just saying he is kind of more typical roles. He's a learner, he's a teacher, he's a novice, he's an experienced. And so, of every hue and caste am I, of every rank and religion, a farmer, mechanic, artist, gentleman, Quaker, prisoner, fancy man, ready. Again, covering the gamut. I am all of these things, which is great. And we've kind of had this before. We've had it with animals. We've had it as moving through. This is honestly some of the least specific that he has been this whole time. He's throughout, he has given us these very clear images of a person doing something. I'm just double checking right now to see if this is truly, it seems to be the least specific he's been. It seems to be. Where we don't have a very clear, vivid image of what we're talking about. So, he gives us this list, trying to just cover up, I'm American, I am... But again, this seems to be a better approach, kind of the show don't tell rule of writing. Instead of saying, I'm everyone, and everyone is me. He could have said that. Heck, he probably has said that. But he is now listing, in a way, everyone. He's saying, I'm part of them. I'm from them. They are part of me. I'm at home with them. So when he says I am of them, he's saying that I am like descendant of them. It's like I am comfortable around them. But all this is saying I belong to all of them. And so typically when we are trying to create this sense of belonging, especially with nationalism and trying to say we're Americans, people tend to appeal to something higher up. Well, we're all, Christians. We're all Americans. You go up the hierarchy of structure, and you're part of this larger group. And Whitman's approach has kind of to go humbler and saying, we are all part of this larger group, but we're part of this simpler group. We're all humans. And Whitman would probably even push on that. We're all living, because he's connected with animals and plants, right? Which he does at the very end. We'll come back to that. He says, we're all living. We all belong together. Just as he says there's this interconnectivity, there's this community, there's this ecosystem. He is not just talking about a biological ecosystem again. He's talking about a spiritual ecosystem. He says we are all slivers of stained glass in the great tapestry of existence. Some darker, some brighter, of every hue and caste am I, but we are all glass. We are all in this window. And then he says, I resist anything better than my own diversity. Which is a fascinating sentence. I want to parse it apart forever. Because resist anything better than my own diversity. So first of all, he's saying there are things better than diversity. He does create higher goods than diversity. But he says he resists them, which is interesting. And then he says my own diversity, which is also interesting. Because he is not just talking about we normally talk about our diversity. There's a group of people, the group has diversity. He is saying there is diversity within himself, which I think is true. I think he would say that, oh, you are from, I myself am from Virginia, so I'm technically a Southerner, but Virginia is not very Southern. I went to school in Richmond, so I'm kind of city folk, but I lived in the suburbs, so I'm kind of suburb folk. When I was growing up, money was really tight with my family, but they have ascended the middle class pretty well, and they're in the upper middle class, and money is not as tight for my family now. And so I have kind of lived on that spectrum. And so there is a diversity within me. There are parts of me. I'm a teacher. I'm a Christian. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a son. I have all these roles and and they're all relational. They're all defined by my connection to another thing. I am a son, which means that is a connection to my mother and my father. I'm a brother, which connects me to my siblings. I'm a father, which connects me to my children. I'm a husband, which connects me to my wife. I'm a Southerner, which connects me to the whole Southern United States. I'm a Virginian, which connects me to a whole state. I'm a Richmonder, which connects me to a whole city. All of these, I'm a teacher, which connects me to all these teachers and all these students. Laterally, it connects me to coworkers, connects me to principals and admins and districts and boards of education and secretaries of education, and it connects me to students. Any way I define myself is a relational claim. There's probably almost certainly some exceptions to that. But my identity is rooted often in my connectivity to the world around me. And I have this tapestry of identities within myself, and that's the diversity within myself. And that's what he's saying. He resists anything better than that. He's saying, I just want to go back to the diversity within myself. There may be some higher goods, right? Because certainly someone could argue that homogenization is a higher good, right? Diversity gives strength to an ecosystem, but unity also is its own strength, right? So what's this balance between unity and diversity, between homogenization and heterization, right? Like, how does that work? Breathe the air, but leave plenty after me. That's a really interesting line, and I don't know what to do with it. I just want to pick at it. Breathe the air, but leave plenty after me. Again, it's talking to somebody. He's letting you breathe. It seems to me that he is saying that we share this air together. Not sure if there's much more beyond that, but I just love it. There's a playfulness to it. And am not stuck. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a phrase. I breathe the air, but leave plenty after me. So I take up space, but I leave plenty behind. Okay. I am not stuck up and am in my place. What I love about this passage, this section of the poem, is there is such humility to it. I find that, again, a lot of our arguments about connection are very tribalistic. This is what we do. You're part of us. You're part of our family. This is the way our family does it. You're a Christian. This is the way Christians do it. You're an American. This is the way Americans do it. And a lot of our connection to a group comes at the seclusion of another group. You're on our side. There are sides. There are tribes. There are lines. Pick your box. But you only get one box. Maybe some sub-boxes within that. You can be different denominations of Christian. But every time you pick a box, you exclude every other box. Every time that I say I'm Protestant, I'm no longer connected to the Catholics. Every time I say I'm Methodist, I'm no longer connected to the Baptists and the Episcopalians. And every time I draw a line in the sand about who I am drawing even more lines about who I'm not. Which is why Walt Whitman is resisting anything better than his diversity. Because he's saying, I am not looking to become stuck up. I am not looking to take up more than my space. I'm going to take up some. I breathe in the air, but leave plenty after me, because I am not cutting off all my options. I'm not burning all my bridges. I am the northerner and the southerner. I'm the Canadian and the Kentuckian. I'm the old and the poor. I am a human. I am a living thing. I am in my place. And my place may be high, it may be low, but it doesn't matter. What's important is that it's my place. That is my diversity. And I resist anything better than that. This is where I'm allowed to be. Wherever you are is where you're allowed to be. Wherever you are is where you should be. And we, us American dreaming Westerners, oh, we hate that. But what about stratification? What about rising up the ladder? What about moving in directions and hopes and dreams and plans? What about celebrity and fame? What about comfort? What about failure? What about moral scales of right and wrong? Can you say to the sinner who you are is where you're supposed to be? Well, Whitman is saying, yeah. The good and the bad. Because every time you're trying to say I'm good, you're trying to disconnect yourself from those who are bad. Every time you say I am a Christian, you're trying to disconnect yourself from everyone who's not a Christian. The more you try and define yourself, the narrower you become, the smaller. And he is saying, I am in my place. My diversity is sacred. This is who I am. This is valuable. This is what I want to be. And he says, you think I don't even see, and it's the last stanza, and I love that it's in parentheses. It's like a whisper, an afterthought. The moth, the fish eggs are in their place. Can you think of anything lower than moth and fish eggs? The bright suns I see, and the dark suns I cannot see, are in their place. The heavenly bodies, the dark bodies. The palpable is in its place. Right? So this feeling so intense it seems to be tangible, palpable, is in its place. And the impalpable is in its place. The things I can't quite feel. The things that are just a little too ethereal, a little too out of the reach of my fingertips, are in its place. Everything is in its place. The high and the low. And it's all within me. Because I am also, besides just being a father and a son, I'm a predator. I'm an omnivore, right? I'm a gardener, right? I am part of the ground and the earth. I take up resources. I have a carbon footprint. I am connected. I take up space. I breathe the air, but leave plenty after me. I am not stuck up. I am in my place. And this is a sacred thing. That he is saying, I am connected to all these things, but that does not diminish who I am. I resist anything better than my own diversity. But it also doesn't mean I don't want to be so tightly defined that I lose options and connections. I am an American. I have to be careful because now I'm disconnected from the human race, right? Because I'm not a European. And I am saying there's something about Europeans I could not touch. I could not understand. Maybe it's the fact that British people say, I went to hospital. You went to the hospital, you crazy people, right? There's some gap between me. And the more I draw those gaps, the more separated I am. And he's trying to tear down that separation. He started off loafing. What is the grass? Start off with a pretty low. We have low esteem for grass. It's a weed. We like it pretty, but it doesn't have any value besides its bare aesthetic. I mean, it sort of helps with like soil erosion. But I find it interesting that he is taking this section to clarify that yes, I'm connected, but I'm not better. I'm not secluded. I'm not sectioning myself off. I'm in my place. And I think that is so hard. I think so much of our shame is feeling we're not in our place. So much of our striving and our stress is feeling we're not in our place. So much of our depression, our nerves is not in our place. So much of our suffering is feeling out of place. And I don't know if this poem is going to magically say, just make that feeling go away. It's just someone keeps repeating, don't worry, you're in your place. It's not gone. But I think it will work through you as you try to internalize it, as you meditate on it, as you stop trying to draw lines between who we are, because that's what rhetoric, politicians, villains draw lines. We're us, they're them. We're not like them. We're better, they're worse. They're monsters, we're saints. And he is saying, like, I just think I'm just like them. I think at the end, I'm in my place, they're in their place. We all have different roles, perhaps. The fish eggs and the moths are in their place. We're all different. But the thing we have in common is we're all in our place. We're all living, breathing, striving things. All right, I feel like I'm getting repetitive. So, again, this is only meaningful if you reflect on it. And you got to chew on it. Journal, meditate, take a walk, let this sit. Be with your mind and your spirit and wrestle with this. You are in your place. Where else would you be? Where else should you be? Nowhere. So